They thought he was just a quiet old man, but when fake HOA cops came knocking, they discovered the deadly secrets he's been hiding. Grandpa's silence, it's deadlier than they ever imagined. The sun had begun its slow descent behind the hills, casting a soft orange hue over the quiet suburban neighborhood. The air smelled faintly of freshly cut grass, and the gentle hum of crickets filled the spaces between the distant sounds of passing cars. For most people, it was just another peaceful evening. But for me, it had been months since I'd last visited Grandpa's house, and something felt different today. As I turned the corner into his street, the familiar sights of neatly manicured lawns and well-kept homes seemed almost too perfect. Everything was in its place, yet there was an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I parked in front of the old house, the one I had grown up in, and stepped out of the car. The familiar creak of the old wooden fence greeted me, and I pushed open the gate. The house stood at the end of the driveway, nestled between two towering oak trees. Grandpa had lived here alone for years, ever since Grandma passed. He was never much for visitors, preferring the quiet solitude of his home. But today, I was eager to catch up. The porch light flickered dimly, casting a soft glow on the aging front door. I knocked lightly, the sound echoing in the stillness. No answer. I knocked again, this time louder, and waited. The silence stretched on for a few more moments before I heard the shuffle of slow footsteps from inside. The door creaked open, revealing Grandpa. He stood in the doorway, looking exactly as he always had, tall, thin, and with his hair mostly white, though still full. His face, though weathered, held a quiet strength. His eyes, though softer than in his younger days, still held a sharpness that made it clear he had seen things I couldn't imagine. "Grandpa," I said, offering a smile. "It's been a while." He didn't smile back, but he didn't need to. Grandpa's idea of a greeting had never been one of words. Instead, he gave a small nod, stepped aside, and gestured for me to come in. I entered, and the house smelled like it always had, wood and old books. The kind of comforting scent that reminded me of my childhood. There was an eerie calm in the air, like the house itself was holding its breath. "You still haven't made any changes?" I asked, eyeing the worn furniture, the faded rugs, and the aging photographs on the walls. Grandpa gave a small grunt in response, settling into his favorite armchair without another word. I sat across from him, watching the subtle movements of his hands as he adjusted his glasses, folding them neatly on his lap. He always seemed to be lost in thought, even when his body remained still. But today, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The house felt off. I didn't know how to explain it, but it was as if a storm was brewing just outside our door, and we were sitting at the eye of it. A knock at the door broke the silence, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at Grandpa, who didn't move an inch. His eyes remained fixed on the window, though he seemed to sense the shift in energy as well. He slowly stood, giving a quiet gesture for me to stay put. The door opened, and two men in plain clothes stepped onto the porch. Both wore dark sunglasses, and the faintest hint of authority clung to them. They flashed their badges, claiming to be representatives of the Homeowners Association HOA, here to conduct a routine inspection. They said it with a smile, but I could tell something was off. Grandpa didn't speak a word. He simply stood at the door, watching the men carefully. "Mr. Richardson," one of the men said with a smooth, almost rehearsed voice, "we're just here to make sure everything's in order. We've received some complaints about your property's maintenance." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I watched the interaction unfold. Grandpa didn't even acknowledge the men, remaining silent as always. His stillness only seemed to make the men more uncomfortable. "We'll need to inspect your lawn and make sure everything's up to code," the second man added, his voice carrying a subtle note of threat. I tried to step forward, ready to intervene, but Grandpa's hand shot up, signaling me to stay back. I was confused. This wasn't like him at all. He had always been so adamant about keeping to himself. But this situation felt different, almost as if he was testing the waters, waiting for something. The first man stepped forward, misreading the tension in the air. "You're really testing us now, old man. You know what happens to people who ignore HOA warnings, don't you?" Grandpa's gaze remained fixed, but his hand, which had rested on the doorframe, slowly clenched into a fist. I knew the look in his eyes. He was no longer just a man being threatened. He was someone who had been through far worse than these wannabe enforcers could ever imagine. "I told you." Grandpa's voice was his only answer. Before I could blink, Grandpa moved. He was quicker than I could have ever imagined, his body seeming to shift in a blur. The first man never saw it coming. In one swift motion, Grandpa stepped aside and grabbed the man's wrist, twisting it with precision. The sound of the man's grunt of surprise echoed through the room as Grandpa effortlessly flipped him over his shoulder, sending him crashing into the wall. The second man reached for his own weapon, but Grandpa was already on him. With a calmness that made everything feel surreal, Grandpa sidestepped and delivered a perfectly timed strike to the man's side. The second man fell to the ground, clutching his ribs in pain. He looked up in disbelief as Grandpa stood over him, completely unfazed, the calmness in his demeanor almost frightening. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Grandpa said, his voice low, like a whisper that sent a chill through the room. The two men scrambled to get up, but Grandpa wasn't done. His movements were deliberate and measured, the way a trained soldier might handle a threat. They tried to regain their composure, but it was too late. The element of surprise had long passed. "Now," Grandpa said, his voice steady, "you're going to leave this property. You're going to forget this ever happened. And you're going to walk away without a word." The two men, shaken to their core, didn't say a word. They simply nodded, their eyes wide with fear as they staggered to their feet. The sound of their car engine starting was the only noise that filled the silence that followed. I stood there, my heart still pounding in my chest, trying to process what I was witnessing. Grandpa remained standing at the door, his posture still calm. As the car disappeared down the road, he turned and looked at me. "Get inside," he said simply. I sat there, trying to absorb the weight of Grandpa's words, but they didn't seem real. How could this quiet, stoic man sitting across from me, my grandfather, who had always been a pillar of calm, be someone other than what I thought he was? The room felt colder suddenly. Grandpa, though still unflinching, looked tired, as if the years had caught up with him in a way I hadn't noticed until now. His hands, weathered by time, trembled slightly as he placed them on his knees. "I never wanted you to know, because I didn't want you to carry the burden of it," he continued, his voice quieter now. "But the life I had before this, it's coming back." I leaned forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you talking about? What life?" Grandpa took a deep breath, and for a moment, I thought he might not say anything else. But then, to my surprise, he began to speak, his voice growing steadier as he relived the past. "I wasn't always an old man living in a small town. Before this, I was part of something dark. I was trained in Black Ops Special Forces, covert operations. My job was to handle situations that no one else could. Sometimes, that meant taking down entire networks. Sometimes it meant assassination. I was good at it. Too good." My mind raced as I tried to digest his words. "Black Ops. You were a soldier." "Grandpa, this sounds like a movie." He nodded slowly. "It might sound like a movie, but it's real. I spent years working for people who didn't care about the rules, the laws. They needed results, and I gave them those results. I was trained to be silent, precise, and lethal. But then I realized something. I couldn't do it anymore. The things I did, there was no coming back from that." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The grandpa I knew, kind, gentle, always offering wisdom in his silence, was a trained killer, a man who had seen the darkest sides of the world. "I left," he continued, his voice hardening. "I retired, disappeared, changed my name, started over. And for a long time, I thought I had escaped it. But the past, it doesn't let you go so easily. Those men today, they weren't the HOA. They were hired by someone who knew my history. Someone who wants me back." "Who?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Who wants you back, Grandpa? Grandpa paused, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked out the window again, as if searching for something in the distance. It's someone I used to work with. Someone who never stopped playing the game. A man who always gets what he wants, no matter the cost. My mind was reeling. But why now? Why after all these years? There's a new operation, Grandpa said, his eyes turning cold. A job they want me to do. And if I refuse, they'll come for you. They'll come for anyone I care about. The weight of his words crashed over me. The man I had known as my protector, the one who had taught me how to live in the world without fear, had a past full of shadows. And those shadows were coming to find him. Grandpa didn't wait for me to ask any more questions. He got up from his chair and walked toward a small cabinet in the corner of the room. He opened it slowly, pulling out a wooden box that looked old, weathered by time. He placed it on the table and opened it, revealing a collection of small, carefully arranged items, old military badges, photographs, and what appeared to be a series of weapons. Grandpa, my voice faltered, a sense of realization dawning on me. The man who had always kept a distance from the past wasn't done with it at all. He had just been waiting for the right moment to step back into that world. This is the gear I used when I was in the field, he said, his voice distant as he ran his fingers over the items. I kept it hidden here, in case I ever needed it again. It's not much, but it'll be enough. Enough for what? I asked, the chill of fear creeping into my spine. I didn't want to know the answer, but I knew he was already preparing for something. To finish what I started, Grandpa replied, his eyes hardening. And to make sure they never come near you or anyone I care about again. I looked at him, stunned. What do we do now? Grandpa smiled, a cold, determined smile. Now, we make sure they never come after us again.